Welcome to Memorable Marketing by MediaGroup. On today's episode, we have Niki Harrold. Niki has a wealth of experience in a variety of industries, mostly doing online, social, looking at data, and now she's a marketing director as well. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation. I hope you do too.
You have this B2B2C experience that is kind of really hard to bridge for a company. Number one advice, if you work in one of those regulated industries, go out of your way to make friends with compliance and legal people.
Niki, welcome to the Memorable Marketing Podcast. I'm happy you're with us here today. Perhaps you can tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about your personal and work background.
Of course, and thank you for inviting me. Well, you already started off with my name. So my name is Niki. I am a marketer with international experience, close to 20 years, traveling the world, focusing on different European countries and North America, both Canada and the US. I've actually covered quite a lot of industries, and that was with intention because I believe that you bring fresh ideas from different experiences and different industries to your next role or next adventure. So yeah, that's, I think, what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, you have quite a broad experience over those years. So, we have to focus in a little bit about a few of those experiences and what you learned there. But also, maybe we can talk a bit more about what are the marketing strategies of those companies and dig a bit deeper in this way. So I think to start with, maybe we can talk about your experience at Transamerica, where I think you were doing B2B social media marketing.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So that was actually about, nearly 10 years ago now. I spent about 3.5 years leading their community management and social media team. Transamerica will not mean a lot to a lot of people. So let me just give you a quick context there. So Transamerica is one of the largest financial services companies in America, serving, from retirement planning to insurance, life insurance and things like that, for everybody. Now, the big difference is, at least in some respects in the American market, is you don't just go and buy your retirement plan or your insurance plan directly from a company, but you have kind of an intermediary that is a certified advisor. So as a company, you're having this dual-pronged approach because you need that brand awareness with the end customer, but they can't just come to you and buy something from you, right? Like in Europe, we can go to the direct insurance providers, but it's not the case for all American institutions. So you have this B2B2C experience that is kind of really hard to bridge for a company, right? Because you need the brand awareness, but you also need that intermediary person to be buying into what you are providing to the customer, and so that they can recommend you.
Right. So as you point out, you have two target audiences. It happens more often in other industries as well. And in those cases, you want to create a sort of preference for your brand amongst the target audience. But probably much more important, you want to create a preference for the intermediaries because they're seen as the experts and, they're going to be steering people a certain direction.
Yeah, they have the authority in the market.
Right. And I suppose those are very different marketing programs, though, because with the intermediaries, probably there was more focus on events and programs and things of that nature.
Yes, that is true. So it's actually really interesting because I worked in the tech industry for companies like Okta and Dell and EMC. So you already have a B2B marketer experience there. So you can apply some of that knowledge. But because you're talking about something so close to the end customer's experience, right? It's their livelihood in retirement, for example, that you also have to have that B2C experience kind of influencing everything you do. So in this case specifically, the brand was already doing a lot of B2C, so the kind of direct to customer marketing approach. It was very scattered, and I have to say, because there were like hundreds of like mini brands and mini product names involved in the branding exercise, one of the very first steps for us was to step into this world and kind of consolidate and clean up kind of our social presence, right? So you need that really focused customer marketing experience as well. And then what we didn't have was kind of that social selling enablement for the B2B part. So that advisor enablement, right? So that was something that my team built out as the B2B element of that B2B2C structure. You don't just train and explain to financial advisors why social media matters to them and how to do it, right? Because that's a huge gap often with maybe a slightly older generation of sales or advisory personnel. So you train them first on the social media skills. You explain why this matters and how this influences their success. But then you also have to really enable them with the correct content, because we're also talking about a highly regulated financial environment that everything goes through legal and compliance reviews. And so it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to get approval. There's nothing instant and funny and, impromptu. There's lots of industries that don't adhere, to kind of that strict oversight, but there's also quite a few, and financial services being one of them, obviously, that has very strict requirements there. So you have to build out the structure for that too. Yeah.
Yeah, we're totally aware. Many of our clients are in the financial services industry, and I myself come from banking as well. There was a really great comic that I saw that I think is very apt, where there was just a white billboard, and there were two people standing in front of it, and the marketer was just like, "Yeah, this was our compromise with legal."
Yeah, number one advice, if you work in one of those regulated industries, go out of your way to make friends with compliance and legal people, because they're not there to make your life miserable. They're to make your job safe and your company safe. So if you can make friends and you can make them part of the process, not a burden or a hindrance, everything will go much smoother. So yeah,
Yeah, because in the end of the day, it's never just a no most of the time. It's just like you need to find a way to make this work and to stay covered. And I think, that works a lot better when you have the personal connection there.
Yeah, and I think it's also important for us as marketers to keep an open mind, because this is our world, right? And their world is the legal world. And there's a lot more black and white usually in the legal and compliance world. But we are marketers and we usually use all the colors of this world. So if we hear no, don't believe that people are saying no because they want to say no. Just understand that their world is a lot more strict. So you have all the shades. So then start providing a different shaded solution, right? Like come up with a creative way, find a compromise, and bring these people along on the compromise, right? On the journey to find that compromise, instead of getting upset that your idea got shut down, because ultimately together you will find the right thing to do. And there's still creativity and a lot of fun to be had. You just need to find that rhythm of collaboration. It took us 3 years, so it's doable. Just don't give up.
I know what type of work you were doing at that time. Like you had a very strict content calendar with posts that were pre-made months in advance and gone through 12 different committees and so on.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. So, but you can't really be quick on your feet and react to different things. And that's, of course, a downside. But on the plus side, I can imagine that this also gives you time to sort of think more holistically and divide up your day in a way that makes sense. Like you're not probably constantly fighting fires with regards to the end product.
No, that's very true. So actually, it kind of comes back to the conversation about making friends with compliance. We did try to find gaps where we could be more impromptu. So we did cover events, big conferences and trade shows and things like that, where the financial advisors would get their further education and things like that. So we did have the regular content calendar that was planned a quarter in advance. The themes were planned a year in advance, but the content itself was built for a quarter in advance. But we also knew when there were major events that we wanted to have gaps for. And we would have an agreement with the compliance team to say, okay, we are participating in a certain event and we want to be able to post on the scene, on the moment, about things that are happening. And so we set guidelines, right? We got quote unquote pre-approval for certain topics, for certain words, a combination of expressions, type of photography that we were allowed to use or weren't allowed to use. So those we could post at the spot, at the time, and they got kind of post-reviewed by compliance, right? But we also had to adhere to certain requirements of what we definitely cannot say or what we definitely should stay away from. So there was impromptu opportunity. So you just keep gaps in your content calendar for that. Yes, you might not be able to react to the moment's news or the day's, big blow up, but you also, again, if you make friends with the teams, with the compliance and legal teams, every now and then you could ask for a favor of within the working day turnaround time of something being reviewed. I mean, it's a social media post. It's usually like 300 characters, right? Let's just say it's not a 50-page report that needs to be reviewed. So favors can be asked, but your relationship cannot be based on nothing but asking for favors.
No, and look, the stakes are so high too. I mean, it just takes one really bad post for big fines. There are people that lost their banking license because of different, and then it is just one little social post. So someone goes is this worth the risk? No, just shut it all down. But what I got from this, Transamerica, become best friends with your legal and compliance officers.
For sure.
That's basically the lesson that you learned there.
Well, and also that B2B2C can happen. You can actually successfully build such a complex social media environment. And it doesn't even mean you have to have two separate teams, right? It just means that you have to really think through that customer journey and also understand what part of your customer base will actually respond to a social approach and which will not, right? So you're not trying to chase everybody because that doesn't always work.
So B2B2C, just to make it more specific, let's say you would create a campaign or a post or whatever, you would then send this to your intermediaries that would then be able to post it on their social media.
Yeah, so if you think about it from a social media, so we had our own social media accounts directly to customers, right? But we also had a social media advocacy platform that our sales teams, right, our B2B part of the conversation would happen. And so we would create a full campaign from which these advisors could pull and generate their own social media feed from, and that they can tailor. So we created a video or images or a carousel, whatever you name it, right? And we had A, B, C, D, whatever, 4 or 5 different approved copies that they can mix and match and slightly amend, right? Not completely rewrite, not just use their own words, but with slight amendments, they could post it out. They still needed to sound like that advisor's own words, right? So advocacy programs were huge, also making the lives of the sales teams much easier because they didn't need to keep thinking about content generation, more about, does this resonate with my customers, right? The end customer that I'm speaking to.
There was a new product that you needed to push or something like this. You would create a campaign around this that would explain not only to the end customer, but also the
and you explain it in different ways to the advisor than to the customer, right? Because the advisor has to understand it in the context of all the other products in the same field versus the customer need to understand what pain point that product solved for them, right? So it's a very different kind of communication style.
I would think that working with intermediaries has a couple of downsides from a marketing perspective. One of them being sort of the brand risk.
Adjustments, yeah.
The other being a sort of coordination issue, and you've solved that to some extent with a program where you create content for them to push. But yeah, there's still no guarantee that someone is going to actively use it or use it in the same way that you meant it. So I wonder if you could, because we've spoken about the second part, but I wonder if we can talk a little bit about the first part with the brand risk and all the rest of it. Is there something that you learned how to control that?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely locked down all graphics. So the graphics were created by our in-house trained team that was, fully trained on the brand needs. So the images and videos were not editable after they were uploaded into the advocacy program. So to keep the brand safe and on brand, that the visuals could just simply not be altered. We did take in requests. So within the advocacy program, it was not just a push platform, it was also a pull platform. So advisors could give us feedback to say, we want more this, we want more that, give us videos, give us graphics, give us whatever, infographics, you name it, right? If people can tell us what worked for them, what didn't work, what they want more or less of, and then we would create that. But if you're asking me how to make sure that the brand doesn't get into, the wrong hands or doesn't get altered beyond the brand guidelines, when you have hundreds, if not thousands of people trying to speak on behalf of your brand or represent your brand, you cannot do that decentralized. I haven't found a good way to do that decentralized. So I wish I could have an answer, but to us, it has definitely remained within a centralized team, and was provided through a sharing platform, basically, to the intermediaries. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it goes much further than just social. I mean, it goes in all different ways. There are also a lot of companies that we've actually managed a program like this, where we do a co-op program, sort of centrally managed, where brands have a lot of retailers or intermediaries, and they then get a budget for placing advertising. So this is pretty common. And what usually ends up happening is those little mom and pop shops or intermediaries, they would sponsor their son's soccer team, or, they place an ad in some local newspaper that no one reads. And that money doesn't get used in the most effective way. And so, similar to your brand advocacy program, we developed a program where everything is sort of centrally approved and managed, and all the assets are done in this way. And so that means like a sort of more safe environment, and a more effective environment. But it also means you can start to measure. So what effect does this program actually have on sales and so on?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I mean, ultimately, money dictates, right? So if you put the boundaries around how the money flows out, you get more control over both the insight and obviously the end product.
Thank you for listening or watching Memorable Marketing by MediaGroup. On this episode, we had Niki Harrold. I very much enjoyed our conversation. I hope you did too. For future episodes, feel free to subscribe and, of course, like the video. You can find our website for the agency at MediaGroupWW.com. Get in touch for any advice, strategy, marketing work. We'll be happy to help you.